The story of creation, it says God formed a body and then breathed into it a soul, and it was a man, a mensch. So what is a mensch? Not a body alone, and not a soul alone, but a body with a soul. There was this preacher back in Russia who considered himself a great philosopher. He was a legend in his own mind. And he would go around from shtetl to shtetl delivering these philosophical lectures to simple farming people. So naturally they all fell asleep. But he would go from town to town and he would deliver his lectures. One time he comes to a town and he's giving his lecture. Everybody falls asleep except for one guy who's looking at him very intently. And at one point in his lecture, he sees this guy going like this. He said, finally, somebody is listening, somebody is agreeing with me. But after a few moments, the guy is going like this. So he thinks, oh, he doesn't agree with me. So he brought more arguments and he explained it better and he tried harder. And after a while, the guy is going like this. And this went on back and forth. He would say no, and he would explain it better. And then the guy would say, nod yes. So, of course, the lecture went on for hours. Finally, when he finishes his lecture, he goes over to the guy and he says, so tell me, in the end, did you agree with me or not? The guy says, look, I'm a simple farmer. I didn't understand a word you said. He said, then what were you making with your head? He says, last week, my best goat disappeared. And when you were standing at a certain angle, you looked like my goat. But then you turned the other way, and I thought, no. But when you turned back, I thought, yeah, that's my goat. So he says, I finally came to the conclusion, you're certainly a goat, but not mine. When we get together, a whole community of Jews, we got to accomplish something. We got to say something. We got to learn something meaningful, something real, something true, something holy, something without an echo. Otherwise, it comes across like a goat. So let's learn something very important, very real, and very true. What does the Torah tell us about life that we can understand and appreciate? Now, there's an expression that everybody uses that causes great confusion. The expression life after death. And people say, do you believe in life after death? And people are stunned. That sounds like a very deep question. And, you know, we're not so philosophical. Do you believe in life after death? The expression is wrong, misleading, and confusing. What does it mean, life after death? What are you talking about? Are you asking me whether something that has died is alive? That's nonsense. If it died, then it's not alive. Because if it was alive, then it didn't die. So what does it mean, is there life after death? A human being is defined in Torah as a creature with a body and a soul. Because in the story of creation, it says God formed a body and then breathed into it a soul, and it was a man, a mensch. So what is a mensch? Not a body alone, and not a soul alone, but a body with a soul, or a soul in a body. Every life has a certain span. Every person is given a certain number of years. When those years are up, the soul and the body go their separate ways. They each return to their natural habitat. And that is the expression from dust to dust. The body goes back to the ground because that's where it came from. It was made from the earth, and it goes back to the earth. The soul goes back to where souls come from, wherever that is. When the soul and the body separate, we call that death. But what actually happened when the body and soul separate? The body is not a living thing. By its very nature, it is earth. It's not a living thing. It only lives because the soul gives it life. The soul, on the other hand, is a living thing. It is alive. So when we ask the question, is there life after death? What are we talking about? Are we talking about the body, or are we talking about the soul? Either way, the question makes no sense. Because if you're talking about the body, and you're asking, is the body alive after it dies? Not a very good question. Of course not. If you're asking, is the soul alive after it leaves the body? That's not a good question either. Because, of course, yes. A living thing can't die. Life can't die. It's just a logical, necessary assumption. Life can't die. Death can't live. So is there life after death? What does that mean? What's alive is always alive. Not after death, always. So the only real question, the only logical question should be, where does life go when it leaves the body? That's a good question. And I don't know the answer. That's what makes it a good question. But is there life when it leaves the body? The soul is more alive when it leaves the body. Because while it's in the body, it has to schlep this thing around. It's like a locomotive. Can a locomotive move when it's disconnected from the 300 cars? Can it move? Yes, it can move a lot easier. So the soul is a locomotive. The body is like the cars, the caboose. So for 120 years, the locomotive schleps this body around and gives it life. When it separates from the body, it becomes more alive. What does life mean? Life means feelings. Life means knowledge. Life means sensitivity. How much knowledge can a soul have when it has to work through a little brain? It's limited. How much sensitivity can the soul experience when it has to experience it through an insensitive body? It's limited. How much emotion can a soul feel when it has to do it through a human heart? It's limited. And that's why there were times in the olden days when people would die from excitement, from heartbreak. Why? Because the heart couldn't take it. The soul was feeling more than the heart could take. But when the soul is not attached to the body, it feels those same feelings more intensely. It understands what it had studied or what it had thought more deeply. It's now free to live without restrictions. So when people say, God forbid a husband dies leaving a wife, or a wife dies leaving a husband. Does the soul in heaven still feel, care, know? The answer is, what do you mean still? Now it really feels. If it could feel love or compassion or devotion through a human heart that is only so big, imagine how much love it feels now that it's not restricted to that little heart. And it doesn't have to worry about whether the heart can take it. Now it can really feel. So it's hard for us to imagine how much emotion is a soul capable of when it is not restricted by the human heart. How much knowledge and understanding is a soul capable of when it doesn't have to work through the little brain? How much does the soul see when it doesn't have to see through eyes? How much does it hear when it doesn't have to hear through the ears? So is the soul still alive? Not still alive. Now it is fully alive. We have a Sunday night program for VIPs that you might be interested in. It's informal, it's questions and answers, it's conversation. It's really relaxed, it's really pleasant, enjoyable, informative, and kind of community-like. It's a Sunday night program. There's a Wednesday morning program for the VIPs, and there's a Wednesday night program. All of it just conversation, casual, laid back, unscripted. So join us, take a look, click the link below and see which of the three suits you best, and join us for some enjoyable conversation.